welcome back. It's a week on the Cosmo, so I'm hoping to get both sides of the sills made, and I'd like to get lower quarters, the rear side at least made, get this dog leg made. There's a join up here, factory, and I'd like to get this front half made, which is another join along here. So I'd like to get those made for both sides and in a sill. So Em and I went for an adventure to pick up some parts. Got a front lower valance, a bonnet and a boot lid. And I thought it was a weird question. He asked if the car I'm coming in has a tow bar. And, came home with a Cosmo. Wow. Surprising day. So what's the plan with this thing? Well, you guys know me, I don't do leaf springs. So it's going to be perimeter cut and put on top of an MX-5 floor pan. Because of obvious reasons. There's no point repairing all this old junk and collect parts for 10 years just to have something that drives like a 1960s car. There's no point. There's no point trying to find tie rod ends and brake calipers, like all ball joints and stuff like that. It's no point. It's impossible to find this stuff, so just put something in there that's off the shelf, readily available. The internal sill width is actually identical between the two floor pans. So that's pretty interesting. They look very similar as well, the two cars. So I got to shorten the wheelbase 60mm. So I'll take 60mm behind the seats or in front of the firewall, depending on where the wheelbase actually sits. And yeah, so there's no real point repairing all this old junk that's hanging on by a few threads. For what reason? Just for it to drive like a car on leaf springs? Like, we don't need horse and carriage technology anymore. It's 2023, so you may as well put something in there that's modern and drives good. It's either that or you spend weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah, I could make dies for all these profiles in the floor, and I can make this floor no stress. But why? Then you've got to find the original seats, the original carpet. You've got to find everything that's original for the car, and the other people with these that are making them original cars are way further ahead. They have much more complete cars, so them parts deserve to go to those people. These ones are perfect for resto mods. Okay, so just playing around with the profiles now, figuring out which steps it needs to be, and it's obviously got to go, you got to do that first fold, which is in here first, and then that second, and that third. Otherwise you can't actually get the right profile there. You're limited on the press brake. So figure that out before I go too far. Put a 1500 long piece in there and ruin it, like I've done 100 times in my life. Okay, we've got the first two folds sorted on there. We'll do this top one now to tip it back over, and then do the return up for it to be spotted too. So I've just got to do the drop down now to allow the pillar and the quarter panel to overlap on this edge. So now that we've got the center section of the sill made, I can make the lower quarters, both sides, and then cleco them in place so they've got reference points. I know exactly where they go. Then remake the pillar, replace the pillar so it sits over the top, and then I can unpick the outer sill, slide the sill in, and worry about what the inner structure is like then. So one thing I noticed when looking at that Cosmo that had good sills on the weekend is they have these little points that hang down every 300 or so, and it's to hold the fuel and brake lines, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think we'll be running that on this one, because we're not really going for originality, which is just building a driver. Alrighty, attempt number one for the lower quarter. So I just gave it a quick slip roll just to get the shape close before I tip the door edges and this bottom one over. So same as before, just tip these over, soft lower wheel, small upper, and easy does it. Just do one or two passes on it, give it a little faint line just so you can check, make sure you're happy with it before you actually go too far and then make more work for yourself. Before, the ends are not going to be as definitive because there's not enough material there to fight against to tip it over. So just go to the dolly and just give those a little touch up just to help them out, and then go back and start tipping it. Switched over to a more solid lower wheel because I've noticed this is actually pretty sharp compared to this side. It's more rolled for the door edge, but the front guard edge is actually pretty sharp. So Just switched over to this one just to do that side. Just little tweaks with the kick shrinker as you go. Not much needed on this side, more so this edge. Just wants to flatten out as you tip it over. Pretty handy piece of tooling I learnt from Wayne McDonald from Automotive Panelcraft. Just put this in there and saves you hitting by hand. I don't want to be a one-handed cowboy and mess my piece up, so I'll just show you one just on the edge there. So it just saves you doing it by hand. Much less hammer mark. I found it most useful for turning around a corner like that, where you haven't really got a dolly that shape. It just pushes it in and allows the metal to just go down in that gap. Makes less mess. Okay, so door edge is turned over, roughed in. Got the guard edge roughed in. Just got to worry about how it actually folds under now. So we'll use the other side for reference because it's more complete than this side. Okay, passenger side's roughed in. See how we fit. So we're good everywhere. Happy days. Okay, so there's some structure left behind to Cleco on this side, but unfortunately there's nothing left in here, so there's no point even trying that. I've just got to clamp where it can go. That's it. I know the wheel arch does continue forward and wrap under the tyre, but yeah, that's no good for actual cars that are going to be low and driven, because that's just enough for standard wire wheels that have no scrub radius. So we'll get rid of that while we're here. We'll just go straight because we don't want to be catching on the edge of the guard just because you want it to look dead factory. Just doing a pattern for the rear at the moment, but I'm going to make the driver side exact same as this while I'm here. It's fresh in my mind, so I'll get those two fronts made the same and then I'll worry about the backs. Started on the dog leg, just gave it 2 passes, give it a pretty faint line on there and hammered the edges so that they're a bit sharper, and just keep checking as you tip it over till it's 90. Alrighty, got the dog leg all roughed in, so sit it on there so it sits good everywhere. Okay, got the dog leg just sitting in place. I've got to work out this little return here, add that on, and then I've got to infill this. Stupid me, I cut it down, and it's obviously meant to be 20mm, not 5 like the fronts. So I fix that up. Other than that, it's been pretty good. Don't know what the bottom does yet until I get a good Cosmo here, and I don't know what the corner does yet, so I can trim all that, play with those areas, but the main shape is done. Now I can unpick what's underneath, unpick this outer sill, make a new sill to slip between those. It'll meet up to both ends, and move on to maybe the inner, I think, inner structures. So rinse and repeat for this side, just as crusty. So as you can see, someone's put a crowbar or something in there and gave it the old variable door gap. So I've got to pull all that back out before I can see how big the skin's actually got to be. So just mimicked from the other side so we get a rough idea of where we're headed. So I'm going to fold the bottom over now. I'll probably take the door off actually. Looks pretty sad on the outside. It looks even worse on the inside. Ah, what a wreck. Fix you up, little buddy. Just roughly tipped and bent. Sit it back in place. Okay, fitting good. So I can clamp it back on and Cleco it now. Alright, front driver side lower is on. Clamped to whatever floor is even left there, if you want to call it that. Pretty much ready to do the rear dog leg now, and then unpick the sill, put a sill on, entire sill, end to end, both sides, and then that way I know I can lock all those together and unpull it all off again, and then rebuild the inner of the sills before moving on to the floors. Dog leg's made now, just roughed in. I've got to fold the bottom over, so sit it back in place, and I've just got to do that one bottom fold, tucks under here, 40mm. So I'll measure it and copy it from the other side. Okay, so the front's clickered on. The rear I've just got to do now. This, I just slide hammered this out, just using the old screw and pull method. I didn't really care about it because I'm going to make a whole new body line the whole way, so I'd rather it be at the right point instead of caved in. You can see it's still creased over on this side. And I'm not sure how the corners end up, so I'll wait till that good Cosmo is here before I figure out how rounded the corners are and what it actually does there. Nearly ready to do sills both sides. Because these cars are handmade, I was curious on where the joins actually were on all the panels, and I figured out there's actually a seam overlap on the body line. So they welded along the body line for this lower quarter, and along here there's another join which you can just see on this side. So there's another piece along through there. Got one here for the nose cone that splits that up. So pretty interesting where they actually joined it. And this area here that's completely rotted away, I assume this is one piece, and it's not until getting this one that I realised it's another overlap. So no wonder it rusted out so badly. Like, we've got all the water coming in here, filling this area up, and then same as this, you've got all this water pissing in here, just filling this lower quarter up. It's like a recipe for disaster. So just a template for the body line. Transfer that to some scrap for a die in the pull mats, and we'll see how we go at that. Might have to tweak it here and there, but we'll do a test run, see what happens. Okay, so first pass was this one, and obviously it's a bit wobbly because I can't hold it straight. It's pretty close. Second pass, I folded an edge on there so it couldn't actually drive crooked. It's close, just got to tweak it a little bit. I'm pretty sure I just got to take a hair off this side and clearance this a bit more, and I think it should be right. You can tell by the wear marks on this side that it's rubbing. I always feel like an old man when I use files, but it seems to be an even gap the whole way now, so hopefully it works. Second attempt, it sharpened up the line a bit more, and it's actually way closer. It dips off at the end there because it's not got a jig to hold it dead straight. So I have to make up a guide system. I might even buy some like linear tracks to mount off the side of my machine so that I can run door skins through dead straight. Yeah, so I was saying I want to get some linear rails like 2 meters long that I can mount either side and then clamp or bolt the piece to it, build a big frame that actually holds the piece dead straight, because even with this straight line fence there's movement in it. There's movement in my top gland. Like, there's a lot of movement in this because it's so old, this machine. So I think if I make a big guide setup that's on a big frame, that will allow me to run things dead straight like door skins. I'm going to try this method of just bumping 2 little lines with the press brake, and then I'll see if the die will make the curve instead. See how that likes it. And that's how you do it. Instead of running the die at full pressure and trying to force it through, you just put 2 creases on there with the press brake, and that's it. Happy days. Don't have to worry about holding it straight now. So I've got the front lower clamped back in place with the body line just clamped over the top. Fitting good. This area is a nightmare because not only is the body curving up this way, the flange is curving the opposite way, so a bit messy in this area. Got to tidy it all up, but fitting good, progress nonetheless. So because the driver's side is attached by absolutely nothing and someone's migged the whole sill on before, I'm just going to unpick it and I'll start making this little turn down area for the pillar to sit on top of. So someone's put a patch on the whole outer of the sill 30 years ago or something and actually made the rust worse. So it's good. So I've just got the sill mock clamped in place at the moment to see what's happening, and I've got to make a new one because I made it 35 the whole way. It's meant to be 45 at the front, 35 at the back. I didn't realise it actually tapered, so glad I got this car here to measure it. Other than that, fitting okay. Just one of them things where you've got to piece the whole puzzle together because you don't know what's bent, and how twisted the car was or anything. I've got to make a door skin probably next before I can lock any of these gaps up. Okay, so 2 days in, pretty good progress. Got the body line worked out, got a front lower quarter, got a mock still in there. I'm going to make another one that's longer. Got the dog leg made for the driver's side, and got the passenger dog leg made, and the passenger front quarter. So next, I think I'll be going to the top of the guard. Might try and make this shape next. I know there's a join here, factory, and another join that was along the body line. So I might try and make this piece next. Obviously these pieces weren't included. I messed around with these pieces a few weeks ago, the nose cone area and headlight. I want to get this area all locked in so the bottom of the car is actually not going to move at all before any floor and stuff gets removed. So it's more so I'm just going to do all the body really, so I'll probably even go body line next and get that rear arch sorted before I move up to the top of this quarter and get all the door gap fitting alright, because we've got a roof cut for this car, so I don't have to worry about actually making a roof, which is nice. Massive gain there. Okay, so I got my sills guillotined up. Had another practice run at a body line to see what it had to be. I made it slightly too thick, so scrapped that one. And I made another one, 2mm off it, and seems to be good to go, so we're good. So now I've just been running it through the English wheel just to get the curve right up in there. And this one's actually not dead flat either, the quarter bows outwards, so I'm just working on that at the moment. And then I've got to fade the line off here, and I'll probably join it about here. I'll leave this factory pressing for the bumper because it's already there. There's no need to reinvent the wheel and make it. So I've got to incorporate the factory arch into this body line as well while I'm here. But on my one, I'm not going to run the factory flat arch. I don't like it. I want to radius it up to match the front. So I don't know where I'll go after I make this line, if I continue up on the top of the quarter and get this section made and try and do the roof flange, or jump on the front quarter. I really want to try this body line. I think it'll be a really interesting shape to make. So I might even come here, or do I ditch the campaign and do a side quest, make a door skin? I don't know. Not sure at the moment. It's a bit all over the place. I've got that line just clickoed on. So we've got to fade it off around here. So I've got plenty of excess to attempt it. Probably attempt it right on the end, see what it does first. Might even use that scrap one just to have a play around, see how I can fade it off nicely. But I've got to draw this arch on from the underside now, and then tip it around, see how that works out, and then tip it around for the front of here, obviously. Piece by piece, coming together. So here's the tedious part of tidying all this up, because it's such a small area and you can't fit it in the machine. It's back to old school and by hand. So I corked all this inwards to give it the concave that it needs, and then had to tap it over this to bring it back up in any low spots. So a bit of a nightmare of a shape, but it's getting there. The line's got to be faded off in this area. So I might go check it on the car now, see how we're looking. Alright, that took so much body work to get that fade off and to taper it around the body. Absolute nightmare. I'm still not done yet. I've still got to get rid of all these, really smooth that up, and then sharpen up the body line. But yeah, not keen to do that for the other side because that was a bloody nightmare. So factory, there's a join here, as you can see on the quarter there. So I'm going to try and just do it in manageable pieces. 1200 comes to about here. So I'll probably try and make this section along here, go up to about there, and then I'll add this whole boot lid rim in another piece. Just trying to make it all manageable for one person. Don't want to make the panels too big and then they get away from me on the wheel, and the weight of the panel itself is doing damage if you don't have two people. Same with the front, there's a join along here. So I want to try and make this piece. I think it's going to be a pretty tricky shape too. It's not exactly dead straight either, it curves out. So pretty interested to know how to go about this one. Wouldn't have a clue at the moment. But it'd be pretty cool to have this piece joined to the headlight corner, and then it's all nearly one piece, then it's nearly all fresh. Don't worry about doing around the window and stuff like that. Alrighty, see how this goes. Transfer this to some steel. Hopefully I can tip this over the whole way. It's still good in this area here, so hopefully I'm going to join under there somewhere. This is pitted, so I have to remake all this, but this back side is pretty good. So we got to work backwards on this one, obviously. So I flip the template over, and now I'm just going to mark the razor blade to scratch through, and then I'll draw it on for the door edge and that big body line there. So ready to start fucking it all up. So I've scratched it along now. You can just faintly, very faintly see the cuts. So I'll trace them over with the texture now. Alright, scribbled it on, and I'm not sure the best process if I should do the curve first or if I should tip this line, and that way I can shrink along this flange here to give me the arc. I'm not sure how to go about it, so I'm going to try and tip the line first and get the actual arc in the panel by shrinking this face, but we'll see. So I'm just using that little slapper tool to turn this edge over uniform. Test it on the car. So it's coming along. It just needs this top edge to be pushed over towards the headlight, and I'm thinking I've got to shrink this bottom flange to wrap it right under. So there we go. Okay, so I've shrunk this flange here to pull this straight now, so now it's wrapping under the guard, and I've hopefully just got to stretch all this down so that I can do this area. So just stretching and stretching and stretching till I get that to start pulling right over. The bottom is straight, but it's got a long way to come over before it's going to meet the headlight area, so it's got to keep hitting it over. Gonna have to give up there and change it because it's just split, and I was only just using nylon mallet, so it's obviously just too much stretch there for one piece. I'm gonna have to cut it along that edge, which is fucking annoying. I was hoping to get it out of one. Well, that's a fail. Start again. Okay, attempt number 2 for this panel. I started from the top this time. See what happens here. I think this area is still going to fight me really badly, but see what happens. Alright, top of the arch is coming along much better. Still got a bit here to pull in, but it's coming along. I'm going to trim it obviously around there and join it to this piece. I've just got this little infill to do. That's probably the bit that actually battled me the most, and I'll just do that as a third piece. So top of the guard is clamped back on, coming along pretty good. Got a few areas in here, just got to go in a bit deeper on here and roll the top over, but it's coming along, so much better than the first attempt. So nearing the end of the 4th day of progress on this. It seems to be coming along pretty good. Got most of these panels roughed out and just clamped in place, ready for detailing further and further, but I just like to get them all roughed out so I have a good idea of what's to come really. So like obviously it's got heaps of planishing to do on the rear of this area where the body line fades off, and I don't know what the quarter actually looks like yet till the good Cosmo is here. This one's also bad, so I can't check off that one, but pretty good to have all these panels at least roughed out, so come together pretty quickly in 4 days. The nose cone obviously not included because I played with that weeks ago, and it's a massive fail, that one, to do that again. So Jay's car is going to get picked up tomorrow, I think he's coming, and it's going to go get the headers and exhaust made. So I'll switch spots with this and that, and I'll pull all the old suspension and stuff out of this, give the old owner back the axles, the diff, the steering, anything that spares that he'll be able to use for his, because it's much more useful to him than it is to me. Can't wait for the armchair experts. They're going to tell me that they would have saved this car, would have turned it back to original. Yeah, you wouldn't have, alright mate, it's cooked. So just let me perimeter cut it and actually make something of the car instead of yard art. Okay, my one's all stripped down and swap spots. So I'll box all that up with some frame to hold all the roof and everything all square, because there's not really anything left holding the shell together once the floor's gone. And make like a little jig so I can lift it by the roof itself on the hoist arms and lower it over the top of the new floor pan.